Okay, I got chalk over it. I hate this. Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for coming. A lot of people here from the community. Thanks for attending. You're welcome to come to any class that interests you as long as there's empty seats. So that's great. So you're welcome to participate and evaluate, ask questions, whatever. So, yeah. So anybody have any thoughts about last Tuesday's class with the student panel? Got some great comments. Anybody feel anything emotionally about what they said? We saw a lot of people with diverse disabilities. They're all students here at Stanford. Anybody have any impression that they were left after doing that? Sarah, you're right here.
It was really great just listening to your guys' stories. And I think it just made all of us think about a different perspective that we've never experienced before. So,
perspective, that's it's a
really
part of the class. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think what was really powerful was kind of like the network of people that supported these individuals being more than what doctors or other people had said was their limitation.
Right.
Yeah.
So at Stanford, they talked about the Office of Accessible Education, and we'll have Terry Adams here later on in the quarter talking about not necessarily that her office, but about other things too. But you can ask her questions about the Office of Accessible Education. Anybody else? Jesse, do you have any comments? How did that impress you?
Yeah,
seeing all
it was awesome.
Awesome. All right, I like that word.
Yeah, thanks for sharing stories. So my parents are deaf, and so I have a certain view of what disability is and the idea of empowerment. And it was just nice to see that same kind of thing echo in different people with different abilities.
Yeah. So what kind of assistive technology do your parents use, if any?
So as a child, it was hearing aids and closed captions, interpreters, which were big, vibrating, the bed that shakes, for an alarm clock or a light that would flash to wake them up. It was really cool to be a kid in that environment.
Okay.
Bionic man with all this technology.
Maybe we'll have a session next year about children of parents with disabilities. So, yeah, thanks for your comments. So, every week for students, please make sure you sign up on the attendance form. If you get here a little bit late, we'll have a break where you can come up and do that. And you also you're also required to have a chocolate chip cookie if your body can handle that, because it just helps you think better. Okay. So I have the sign up to meet with Dave sheet on the end there. And I was thinking that it would really be good that instead of having you send me your weekly report by email, that I meet with your team. I mean, it'd be a lot easier for you as a student and less time, and I get a chance to meet you and have it back and forth. So, teams, sign up to do that. It's only going to take about 15 minutes, and I have a wide range of times. There's one slot before class and one slot after class that may be convenient for you. So there's through next week on there. Okay? So thanks. Okay. So next, on Tuesday, we're going to the Magical Bridge Playground. And we have a sign-up sheet for carpool passengers. And unfortunately, Eric can't drive, so the people that were with him, I'm going to have to put him with other people, and maybe we can use one or two more drivers. So if you're a driver, come up later and let me know. If you're a student that hasn't signed up yet to be a passenger, please do that. And what I'm going to be doing tomorrow is sending out a list of the drivers, and for each car send out a list of who's in what car and the names of all the people and stuff like that, so that you can more easily get together. And the way it will work is that all the drivers will bring their cars on Santa Teresa over here and park along the curb. And students, I really want you to make your best effort to get here on time or a little early, so that we can get to the playground on time, because you want to spend more time in the playground, right? Okay? And it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's maybe one of the first public tours they've had. It's a brand new playground. I'm not even sure that it's finished yet. So this is an inclusive, accessible playground being built in Mitchell Park. And the woman who's going to be leading the tour, Olenka Villarreal, who you might have seen in the pitch on pitch day, took it upon herself, because she has a daughter with developmental disabilities, to raise $4 million to get this project going. And she's really a great person. And so we're going to have a lot of fun there. Yes? Yes. Yeah, I assume so. I mean, it's going to be a playground and then public playground, so that'll be fun. Okay. So are there any people that have signed up for a carpool that really need to get back early? Okay. Make sure that you arrange with your driver to leave early.
I was actually assigned with Eric, so I have to use that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
I
that.
was assigned with Eric, but I think...
Oh, okay. Okay. So we'll try to, you need to sign up, and maybe there's somebody else that has I know there's one other person who is not on the list that was going to drive himself, because he has to get back early. So maybe you and he can do that. Yes, Elise.
Are we be back here at the end of class, or is it going to be extended?
Well, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. So I want to get there by 4:30 and spend about an hour there. So we're going to be back a little bit late, But
Not too much up.
no, I don't want to. Yeah. And we may, I don't know when the end point is going to be, because it's the first time we've been there. I don't know how long, it'll take. But I know that everybody likes to be in the playground. So, I mean, how many other classes have gone to a playground during class time? Okay. So this is going to be great. So, real quickly, here's the directions. And rather than go through this, I'm going to send it to the drivers so they'll know. But it's really easy to get to. It's just down El Camino, left on Charleston, and parking in this Unitarian church here, and the playground is right there. And so if you're flying in, okay, so here's Charleston, and here's the Unitarian church right here, and I assume this is the parking lot, and this is an old photo, but the playground's going to be right here. And just above that A there is the magical bridge itself. So I think we'll have to cross that in order to get into the park. It still may be under construction, but it's fine. Okay, and so here's some images of the stuff that's in there, which we'll get to see in person, and some other stuff as well. So I want you to continue working really hard on your team projects or your individual projects. I want you to make progress every week and tell me about it. If you're stuck or hit a snag, let me know. I can help you. If you need more information, maybe I can connect you with people or know of some articles that will help you. Okay? So talk to Dave anytime. Okay, so who hasn't yet got the safety orientation and a PRL pass? You need to do that if you're going to be working on a project. The sooner you start, the more prototypes that you can do, and more interaction you can have with the TAs there. So that's why you want to do that. So in 3 weeks for team projects, we're going to have the midterm presentations. So put that on your schedule. Okay? If you have any questions about what you need to show, please ask now. Okay, or if you come up with something, a question later on, you can email me. So, by popular choice, I'm going to talk about vintage or antique assistive technology, okay? So I pulled up this ad. So this is an old Apple II ad that I thought was really neat. What kind of man? I guess only men owned computers back at that time. But so this is Ben Franklin at an Apple II with a 5¼ inch floppy disk drive and a TV that's the monitor. So we've really gone a long way since the late 70s. So that's sort of antique technology, not necessarily assistive technology, but it was actually made into, for a lot of people, they had a card that plugged in there that allowed them to access this computer. So it was actually the first computer-based assistive technology thing that was available to the public. Let's look at some old wheelchairs. So this is really neat. This is there's 2 big wheels in front and a wheel in back, and the wheels are made out of wood. Even the spokes are made out of wood. You notice that it has an elevated leg rest here because this guy has something going on there. And it has the hand rim so the person can maneuver himself around. And so here's some more of the same kind of devices at the White House. But if you notice here, the back of the seat is wicker and still made out of wood. 1 cast-ring wheel in the back, hand rims and stuff. This was the state of technology back then. Here's another one that has elevating leg lifts, sort of the same design. This has a recliner mechanism, so the back can recline. So that's new. And then this is pretty interesting. So somebody looks like took a regular chair and put these like wheels from a wagon wheel on it. So I actually saw this at a museum. And so it's pretty neat. Pretty neat. It looks like it could have been a rocking chair. Yes, I remember this. This is a stair climbing wheelchair from Quest. The company was in Sunnyvale, and this was a really, really neat design because not only did it have wheels underneath here, but it had treads. And so they used the tread to go up the stairs backwards. And another really neat feature is that when you go up the stairs, it moved it pivoted the chair so you were sitting upright. Foster's Beer sponsored this. I mean, they put millions of dollars into it, but it never made it to market. But it was a neat device. Here's a prototype we did at the VA, and the neat thing about this was the wheels. So these are wheels that have these rollers on the outside, and if you notice, there's only 3 of them. So with 3 wheels on these rollers, you can actually move around in any direction, including sideways. So that was like, how many people have ever seen a wheelchair go sideways? No, this was the first one. So we had little shaft encoders on here to monitor the wheel rotation and a little joystick, 3-axis joystick. So that was really neat. But it turned into this prototype, which was a lot nicer looking, using a Recaro racing seat from a car and a force control joystick, which I guess might be on the other side. But we made these wheels in-house at the VA, and the 2 wheels are in front and there's a wheel in back. And if you go over to the Gates Center, you'll see a robot that uses these wheels as well. We were the first people to employ a 3-wheel design in wheelchairs. And this one came that close to being commercially available, but it didn't make it, so it's not commercially available. FES stands for Functional Electric Stimulation. So if you're a person who's paralyzed due to a spinal cord injury, your muscles are still there. It's just that your brain can't communicate with them. So what this research does is it sticks electrodes into the muscles or on the skin, and there's a computer that stimulates those muscles in a coordinated fashion so that you can walk, but you still need to have canes. And so this was an early attempt at that, and this is a later attempt. I think I might have actually been at this conference. So this is Dr. Marcellet from the VA, and he had about 5 or 6 people that were subjects that were walking. So one of the things to notice in these pictures is this guy has really muscular legs. And normally if you have a spinal cord injury and you don't use your legs, the muscles sort of atrophy. But you can see that this guy, because he's using those muscles, they're really beefy, let's say. So here's an exoskeleton for an arm, the bad thing about this is that you have to control it with this joystick that's in front of your face, and the whole thing is mounted on a wheelchair. So you can't walk around with this. You have to be in the wheelchair and strapped in pretty well in order to use it. But everything has to start someplace. There's a bunch of these feeding aids, and there's a bunch of them around now that you can buy, that if you're unable to feed yourself, there's a little mechanical mechanism that sort of scoops up the food and brings it to your mouth. Here's another model, and there's things on the market now that do similar things. So this is an environmental control unit. So this is a way for people who have a spinal cord injury to control the things around them, and those things are a flashing light, the TV, turning on and off electrical appliances, and calling the nurse. So this is the main box here, and in there's a bunch of relays, including what's called a stepping relay. So look that up. Look up stepping relay. So it's a way of, and this is a display here, so it would scan through these functions. So you would scan through these functions by sipping on a straw that's connected to a pressure sensor, and that would advance through each of these operations. And when you got to an operation that you wanted to activate, you would blow into it, and relay would come on, and power would go to whatever device. So there were these TVs that you can turn on and off and adjust the channel using this mechanism. So these were used both in hospital rooms and in patients' homes. But very clunky, because there's all these wires around that you had to run. Very inconvenient, but it was something. Here's a really interesting device, and you got to remember, this is like early 80s. This is a voice-controlled environmental control called Butler in a Box, and it actually worked well. These were in the days of Apple II, so that was the kind of computer technology that was available. So you spoke to it, and it would say, light on, and would turn on the light and stuff like that. And I think this one used these X10 modules, which are send commands over the AC wiring to turn on and off devices. Eye gaze control. Here's one that's on the glasses that figured out where your eye was, and it would either move the cursor around on the screen or have you select something. Here's another model that you had to sit very still. There was a camera here that looked at your eyes, and it would light up these. You would look at one of these characters, and the camera would figure out, which letter you were looking at. So this is a communication aid. Here's another communication aid, and again, this is for people who are non-vocal, and so they would move this. This is a magnet. They'd move this over this matrix of letters here to form a message letter by letter, and the output would appear on this display or be printed out. And I think some of these had a voice output option as well, so you can actually speak. But doing communication this way is very laborious. But this was what's available. A pretty common device that was on the market was this TI Speak and Spell. So you just enter your message in here, and it would print it, display it over here, and speak it out the best it could. So again, but this was a mass-marketed device, so these were pretty reasonable in price. Some other devices I saw is an early artificial arm, actually made out of metal or lead. You can see there's pivots for the fingers, not for the thumb. Very good in fighting, because if you hit this, it would protect you. I mean, so it was sort of like armor for for a night. Okay, students, what device is being displayed here? Students. Okay, we'll go with Cassie.
Paper basket.
It has a more familiar name. No, you're not a student. Okay. Eric.
It's an iron lung.
An iron lung. Okay, and what kind of condition would you have in order to use this? That's right. Say it out loud now. Polio, right. So in the mid-50s, there was this polio going around, and thank goodness you guys don't know about it, but it was pretty scary back then. I was like about 7 or 8, and people got polio like you get the flu, and it could affect you in a lot of ways, including being unable to breathe. So what this is a cylinder that you live in, basically, and there's a pump here that pumps it up with pressure, and that would expel the air in your lungs, and then when the pressure was removed, it would force air, back into your lungs. Joe, do you have a comment? No, I have seen chest devices that you would wear that are a lot more compact. And there's also stimulators called phoretic nerve stimulators that actually stimulate the lung muscles that I've seen as well. So, but I understand this is a doctored picture. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of them. But you can imagine, seeing this and being really scared that you're going to get polio. And there's still some polio survivors around. Okay? So I found this guy. So here's a guy who actually wore a peg leg, and he used it he was a dancer, and he was in vaudeville, and he was on Ed Sullivan. If students know about Ed Sullivan, he was on Ed Sullivan. That was the high time. But the early legs were made out of wood and stuff, and here's some of them. Here, very clunky with straps and stuff, and it looks like this one doesn't even have a ankle joint. This one has something around the ankle, but it couldn't have been very comfortable, and I imagine these were pretty heavy. So we've gone a long way since then. More exoskeletons. So this is a device that GE produced in the 1950s, and so this is where it all came from. And so here, this is the one guy that figured that was good enough to operate it, but the idea was that you become, you can lift things without any assistance. Didn't go very far. But students can do exoskeletons too, and this is a student project for arm exoskeletons, I think, done at Purdue. It was in Popular Science last year. So even students can do exoskeletons. But the ultimate exoskeleton, of course, is Iron Man. So that would be awesome if you have that. And some people actually take technology and make it look like it's old. So here's this steampunk designed wheelchair. So it got these nice levers on it, and it has this piston on it that's connected to the wheel, and so it looks sort of like a train, and there's actually smoke that comes out of here, and then there's like 3 cylinders with bubbles going through it, and it makes all these weird noises. So check out the video on that. And Orange County Chopper did a motorcycle for a guy in a wheelchair. And of course, you really have to be strapped down, otherwise you and the motorcycle are going in different directions. So they did this a few years ago for the Christopher Reeve Foundation. So on Tuesday, we're going to the playground. We're going to have lots of fun. Hope it doesn't rain, but rain or shine, we'll be there. So it's going to be really interesting. Today, we're going to have Katie talk to us about exoskeletons after the break. So again, if you need to sign in or get a cookie or sign up with Dave, now's the time. You guys got to get here earlier. Coming 5 minutes late is. So try. Make your best effort to be here on time. Do one thing at a time.
Multitasker.
No, you just don't have enough hands.
Yeah, well. Listen. Okay, yeah.
Oh, your fancy chair?
I'm test driving it. It's still in a prototype.
How long's the battery last?
We're looking at distance, at 18 miles, depending on what it is that you're doing. Yeah, 12 volts, but it's pretty compact. Very compact. Good. This one is a very, simple structure on it. The other model that I've been working with more time is a Bluetooth control.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
So with this is, just gauging the person. It's got pretty modernized as it is. The seat slides back and forth. And because of the size, it has to be an office. But the whole idea is really not
How does it work?
Driving down to Jetlight, and then they can plates there.
Oh, okay, we did that.
So this is going to be one of our projects. It just turns on the line. There's no radio.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back as far back as you can. So
Well, I hope you all... I hope you all prepared yourself because this is going to be pretty awesome. Okay, everybody ready? So, Katie Strausser holds a bachelor's degree from Carnegie Mellon and a master's and PhD from Berkeley. But we won't hold that against you, okay? She's the senior controls engineer at Exobionics, and she works on control algorithms for various research efforts focusing on human interface. Her previous research was focused on the development of control algorithms for the first version of the exoskeleton. And she was one of the three primary inventors of this exoskeleton. So let's give her a warm Stanford applause.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Today I'm going to talk about EXO, I'm going to talk about design, and I'm actually not going to talk as much about control because last year I tried to include everything and then there was no time for the demo, and you're all here to see the demo, so I'm just going to cut out the control part. Nobody likes it anyway, it's all good. You can read my thesis if you're really interested. No. But we will have a demo. Fernanda is one of our test pilots at EXO, and she has graciously volunteered to be your demoer. So So basically, I'm going to talk about the EXO, why we built it, why we build exoskeletons at all. And then I'm going to focus on design and how we designed it, what considerations we took into account when we were designing the EXO. And it's a lot, let me tell you. It's designing products is not easy. And so it's not just making a big Iron Man thing that'll move. There's a lot that goes into it. Then demo and Q&A. So there's more exoskeletons on the market. I don't know why the other pictures aren't there, but they're there. There's about 4 out on the market right now. There's ReWalk. There is a device called Indigo that was built out of Vanderbilt. There is HAL, which is a Japanese exoskeleton, and that's mostly for aging population, not really spinal cord injury or anything like that, but they exist. And then there's EXO, and Fernanda, you might recognize her. So I'm going to focus mostly on EXO today because that's what I know, because that's what I've worked on. But a lot of these things are applicable to exoskeletons in general and adaptive technology and anything you may build. So who do we use EXO for? Last year when I was here, we were mostly focused on that first line, spinal cord injury. I'm happy to say we are no longer just focused on that, and we have expanded our diagnoses, and we really are focusing also on stroke rehab right now. A lot of extra things had to be done to accommodate stroke rehab. So spinal cord injury, you usually have paraplegia or quadriplegia where your line of paralysis is this way. Stroke, your line of paralysis is this way. And so you have different accommodations that have to be made for various things like hand strength, and you want to be able to use the good side, and you want to use the strength that the user has. And so we've done a lot on both the mechanics and the control side to accommodate our stroke users. We've also worked with traumatic brain injury, multiple sclerosis, and a few other diagnoses like Guillain-Barré and other things that I didn't know existed, but they do. Exoskeletons have a lot of advantages. One is that they get gait repetitive, they do it right. The exoskeleton can guide that person's leg through a proper gait cycle, and you can get a lot of steps in. The alternate treatment for getting gait therapy in the hospital right now is usually to put a person in a bodyweight suspension system, so they're suspended over ground where part of their body weight is being supported. You've got one physical therapist on the back moving their hips back and forth to get the lateral shift, and you've got another therapist on each side moving their leg through the range of motion. That's treadmill training. You can also do parallel bar training, but a lot of times the patients still lack strength, and so you may get 8, 10, 15 steps in on a parallel bar session. And when you're trying to retrain those neural pathways and get people walking again, 8, 10, 15 steps, or you could do 500 in the same amount of time in something like EXO that's helping support that person. And so that's one of the main advantages of an exoskeleton. We've got varied assistance, so we can work with the person in the strength that they do have. And then balance training, being upright, stable, moving around, getting to feel that center of gravity and how you should, where you should be standing and things like that is advantageous for a number of diagnoses. And then there's a bunch of long-term health benefits, and I have question marks after these, not because I'm not sure, but because I haven't finished my studies that prove that these are true, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence and some preliminary research that says these things are true. Bone density is actually one of the ones I'm really not sure. Bone density is very confusing in spinal cord injury, and we hope that this would help bone density and help people's bone health. Bowel and bladder function. It helps to get up, stand up, get your body and your digestive system moving properly, and not be all scrunched and sitting in a wheelchair. And so bowel and bladder infections are one of the leading causes of medications and readmissions to the hospital and other things like that. And so we have seen improvement with some of our users by being up and walking. Pain, Many people, especially with spinal cord injuries, have neuropathic pain or pain for various reasons, and for being able to stand up, stretch, do whatever, for many people this helps. Not for all. There are some people that it just doesn't, but for a lot it does. Circulation, it's always good to get moving. One of our test pilots used to get excited because after she walked, she was like, I don't have cankles anymore, guys. And that's awkward, but it's cool. So, that's always good too. And then there's also an emotional benefit to being upright and walking and being able to look people in the eye and give them the same pilot loves or heart-to-heart hugs, and being just up at the same level, being able to, walk in and, go wherever everyone else can go and things like that. So that's why Exos. This Exo is on the market. And we just saw a bunch of products that, either made it to the market and looked crazy or didn't quite make it to the market. And bringing a medical device to market is not easy. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're wrong. So Exo is on the market. We actually started selling our newest model, which is this model, which is the Exo GT, or Exo Gait Trainer, in December of year before last, so 2013. We've been on the market since February of 2012. We have over 100 units in the field, in hospitals, being used in North America, Europe, and Africa, and we're hoping to expand the market. We've got some language barriers in terms of what characters we can display, so that's holding us back a little bit right now. I'll show you guys later what I mean. But we have made a lot of progress in 2.5 years that we've been on the market. FDA clearance, though, it exists, and the FDA is a lot of fun. And this is good. The FDA is good. The FDA makes sure that things that we put on the market aren't going to hurt anyone. But that means that we have to do testing, and we have to show them that we have done our due diligence, both in how we designed the product and how we tested the product, and how we manufacture the product, and where we get the pieces to manufacture the product, and the way we write the software, everything. There's a lot of things that we have to show to the FDA. When we first entered the market, there was no thing, according to the FDA, called an exoskeleton. Didn't exist. We were a gait trainer of some sort, and basically akin to a treadmill at that point. So we were what they call 510K exempt, which means that we did not have to go through a full rigmarole of all the FDA approval. Now, they could audit us at any point, and we definitely were building our case for the FDA, but it was a different classification. Well, now the FDA has learned what exoskeletons are, which is good, but we are in the process of filing our 510K, and that means that we will be FDA approved on the market. We still are in the FDA's good graces, and we can still sell devices and everything like that because this is a new market, we're moving into it. But it's very confusing, and I never thought I would understand so much about the FDA and bureaucracy when I got my PhD in control systems, but I do. And it's great. And I sat on a conference call with FDA today, and it's good times. One of the other things that I also do is I run the external studies that we do with Exo. And so what that means is I am going out to our hospitals, out to our partners, out to any individuals who have purchased the device, and figuring out how we can study this, how we can gather data, not only for the FDA, but for insurance, for not early adopters, basically anybody who we need to show that this is worth the money, and it's a good thing. And so we do a lot of research with our partners, both around here in Europe and everyone else. So, okay, that's why Exos. And that's where we are as a company, where our device is. So the next thing I want to talk about is how we design this. And when you're building an exoskeleton, when you're building any medical device, you take into account a lot of things. And so I'm going to ask you guys, this is the class participation portion of this lecture. If you were building an exoskeleton, maybe this one, maybe something similar like it, that was going to be for use in a medical rehab center. So I'm going to take it to a hospital, give it to physical therapists, train them, and they're going to use it. What type of things would you consider? What type of stuff do you think is important when designing and considering a device like this? Okay, we've got storage. Why?
Because most like public facilities are built for like efficiency and both in space. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that there's not going to be extra space or a room to hang them, so you have to figure out how it can be broken down and assembled and efficient.
Great. Yeah, and that's a big consideration. And also with storage, it's sitting here on a chair. Somebody can come by and knock it off, or somebody comes in with a table or something. And so we definitely consider that. Anyone else have any thoughts of what we need to consider?
Bigger for like people with different like heights and sizes.
Great. Yeah. Setup and adjustment. Yeah. Oh, setup and adjustment. So different sizes and heights. Sorry.
Ease of use on the therapist's end as well as on the patient end.
Great. Ease of use. Expand. What does that mean? What individual things are you looking for in ease of use?
I think especially for a therapist that's used to a particular set of tools, is given like an exoskeleton that kind of seems scary and has the potential to like knock someone over, or like, I don't know, I can kind of imagine people coming up with really bad ideas of what it could potentially do if used wrong. So I guess being very clear about the procedural steps and what like happens if something does like potentially go wrong, or like what fail-safes there exist. Like,
Great.
I feel like there's a tendency not to trust things that are like brand like how exoskeletons are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you said fail-safe, and that's a key thing. We want everything to fail safely. We're not perfect. Things are going to fail, but you want them to fail safely. Yeah. Insurance, yeah. So both in covering the device and then in repaying for it. What else do we need to consider when building an exoskeleton? Yeah. How you get it on. That's key, right? If I can build, I don't know if you guys saw that picture with the giant thing before exoskeleton. I'm sure you did, because I don't know how he got that on. And it probably wasn't quick. So when Fernanda gets into the EXO, I'm going to show you guys some of the considerations we made for exactly that. Anyone else? Yeah? Comfort. Comfort is really, really important. Not only because somebody's going to have to be walking in it, but what happens when your shoe's the wrong size? You get blisters, right? What happens when you get blisters and your circulation isn't as good because you have a spinal cord injury? And you can't feel that you're getting a blister. You go back to the hospital. That's what happens. And you're in the hospital for a long time while that heals. So comfort is important from the, I just want to be here. But comfort takes on a whole new level in medical devices because comfort is safety. Yeah?
So emotional comfort, like it should feel safe.
Exactly. It should feel safe. If somebody is worried about getting into it, they're not going to get into it. I at one point tried to convince my grandma, who had had a stroke, that I was going to build her a robot, and she refused to watch videos of it based on, like, I think she thought it was 5,000 miles away, but she was so afraid that I was going to put her in this robot. Which, I mean, I guess, for me, I've been around this all the time, but especially some of our older users, like, that's scary, and so you want it to feel safe. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
The power source,
Power source, good. So what?
making sure it's not too heavy or
Great.
not too plugged in or something like that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so how we get our power, how we manage power. Are you going to get 5 steps and be done? Are you going to, have to stay within the radius of your extension cord? Things like that are big considerations. We definitely would love for it to last forever, but then you have the weight of batteries and things like that. Yeah.
Ease of maintenance.
upkeep.
Ease of maintenance. Yes, that is very, very important. This device is for use in the rehab centers, which means every hour somebody new is getting into it, which means that we have to be able to clean this very quickly, very easily. We also have physical therapists who are in charge of the device. They have to be able to adjust it, wipe it down, and it shouldn't need repairs, right? Because we don't want them to do that. Anything else? Yeah.
Like the naturalness of it, like basically I want to say like integrating like natural flags or like spring into exoskeleton, or like, because you don't want it like super rigid, and if it moves, like there's reason to move, and what's the doing to it.
Right, so now what you're, okay, so he's saying that it should be a natural motion, that there should be some give to it. That's a two-edged sword. And so in an exoskeleton, if you have somebody with a spinal cord injury, say, who's completely paralyzed, any motion that you do not control is uncontrolled. And so if you have a device that basically allows for free abduction, say, it's just going everywhere. That's not going to work, right? Now, when we build, our EXO also builds military and hiking devices and stuff like that, we give them all the freedom they can and only help where we can, because you want that freedom because the person can control it. Now, this is the opposite in our stroke device, where we want people to be able to use that strength that they have. And so that's where it becomes very key that they can work with the machine. So that's a whole nother can of worms. That's a big question of where do we give freedom, where do we constrain? And it's very difficult. Even in the torso, how much of the torso do we hold rigid? Well, for a higher paralysis, we really want to support that torso. But for somebody who's got a low level of injury, right now we're overly restrictive. And so that could be a problem. Okay, anything else? Yeah?
Cost?
Yeah. It turns out that cost matters. When you're trying to sell something, and we would love for this device to be cheap enough that everybody who needs one could have one. Reality is these things cost money, and I need a job and things like that, but cost is a big concern, and how do we build these efficiently and economically, and things like that. And yeah, the market price, I believe now, is $100K. So it's not cheap. However, it actually is on par with some of the treadmill devices and things like that. And this takes up less floor space, according to our storage expert. Yes? Yeah.
This price is wheelchair.
Yeah. So medical equipment, not cheap, but unfortunately. But yeah, cost matters too. Okay, so I'm going to actually show you a few of these features that we considered. You already did that. Adjustment. Adjustment is really important. Somebody already mentioned setup time. Somebody mentioned maintenance. Someone mentioned adjusting to every size. We have to make this as easy as possible. We're also giving the device to physical therapists and not to engineers who are going to rebuild it all the time and everything. We do have bolts for adjustment for height and the width. There's numbers, so once the person knows their size, they can readjust it to that size every time. One of the other features we have is this handy thing. Does anyone know what this is? These, they're the same, kind of. They're kind of interesting, but they are torque wrenches. Does anyone know what a torque wrench is? Some? Okay. So a torque wrench basically allows you to tighten the bolt to the specified calibrated torque, and then at that point, once you hit that torque, it kind of breaks. It doesn't apply any more torque. Now, why do we want this? We want this because we want to make sure that the legs are tight. We want to make sure that they're adjusted properly and they're not going to start to collapse. But we also don't want the physical therapist to over-tighten the bolt. We also don't want them to have to think about how tight is it? Is it tight enough? Is it not? That's a waste of time. So basically, the torque wrench engineers are like, it needs 50 inch-pounds. So we give them a 50 inch-pound torque wrench, and they tighten the bolts to that, and they're done. And it's great. We also use the same thing for the hip width adjustment, and we only have 2 tools for the entire device. You can adjust everything with these 2. So that's really important too. Yeah, we adjust the lower leg, the upper leg, and then the hip width. Everything else is done with straps and pads and stuff like that. So those are the 3 numbers. That's the hip width. Oh, we also have abduction that can be adjusted to adjust your foot posture, how wide things are. Padding, you'll see it in a minute, but it allows everybody comfort. Donning and doffing, I'm just going to show you because it's more exciting that way. And then we have safety. We have normally on brakes, so that in case of a power failure or any sort of programming issue, it fails safely. There are brakes on the knees. And then we've got adjustable settings in software, so if somebody has a contracture or something like that where they can't extend their leg all the way, we can accommodate that. Okay, enough of that. I'll show you guys how it really works. Okay. I'm going to enroll my lovely aide assistant, Susan here, who had the opportunity to intern with us this summer. So when you have questions later, she's your girl. Can you grab the feet? Okay, so,
You're going to square it, right?
yeah.
What's the weight of the unit?
The unit weighs 50 pounds, yeah, with the batteries. So the ease of getting in is really important that we discussed earlier. So we've got these Don-Doff links. This allows the exoskeleton to open and so that Fernanda can come and transfer in easily to the device.
And tell people what you're wearing.
Wearing?
Driving.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is another wheelchair device that I'm demoing and testing. It's called Wheel. It's Japanese made and it's startup. And that's another story. I'm going to leave this engaged so you can
Okay.
just back it up.
Okay. Yes.
So in order to put one on, do you need to be able to stand?
No, you could just wheel up and transfer from the side. So the legs going out to the side allows for a transfer from the side. Fernanda's just not.
What's interesting being a test pilot is that the engineers need to know different body types. So there are some test pilots that are completely paralyzed from the chest down, and some with limited mobility. And so this way they can get a sense of range of what their devices are capable of doing. It also changes the dynamics of the measurements when a person can move. So that's one reason why. I mean, 20 years ago I wouldn't be able to.
So then once she's in, we can go ahead and move the legs in. It's a little low. Let me- Yeah. Okay.
Bring it in a little bit more. This is tight.
That's too tight.
Yeah.
Good? Okay. Yeah, you want to... That's good. So most of the kind of securing is done with soft goods. We do build all of our soft goods in-house. That allows us to do rapid iteration and learn a lot, like Fernanda said, from different people, different body types.
I assume this has been set up from Fernanda's side?
Yeah. So there are adjustments that would have been done. I did them before.
And also the mechanism is 3D printed.
No, it's not this one. Yeah. There's parts of it that are. You're attached to the chair. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So adjusting the device takes about 5 minutes to do. There's 4 adjustments and on the hip width that have to be done. So it really doesn't take long to get somebody up and going in the therapy session, and that's really important for this cost aspect. If the therapist takes an entire extra therapist to get someone in, it's not worth it. They're not going to use it. So that's very important.
Envision that the person who's using this from the get-go in the hospital have already some compromised physicality. So strapping in all this gives the person a sense of security. A person with paralysis from the neck down or any part, we don't feel things, right? But we see devices that are in place in areas of our body, which allows us to start reconnecting where things are. So this is not really very comfortable right here because it's like a corset, maybe if I was in the 18th century, this would be fine. But not today when things are free for all. So having this sensation placement aids in the proprioception. A lot of this work for the user has to start engaging person's ability to recognize this, because it does help you in the space and pressure sensation, anything to stimulate sensation.
So then once we had that Dondoff link that opened up and allows her to get in, once she's in, we lock that back down, and that joint is locked because we don't power that degree of freedom, so we can't allow too much freedom there, or else she would fall, and that would be lame. So then I'm going to use this controller to start with to stand up. Freaking wires.
Don't worry, I won't shoot off the roof. I better not. We haven't tested that software before. Oh, you guys are all looking at me like, ready to take off.
Okay, so what's going to happen now is I'm going to move into a pre-standing kind of state, and that's just going to sit Fernanda up and support her torso a bit. And then we're going to go forward a bit so that your feet reach the ground. And now we're going to begin stand up. Now you're going to hear it beep 3 times. That's kind of your warning, like something's about to happen. This all goes into people's comfort with what's going on. If the machine just starts moving, we're going to have some problems. But we actually give auditory cues. I'm also going to coach her as well. So, you ready? Okay. 1, and up. Okay. You're back. You're leaning back.
Fernanda, you did not assist in that stand. It was
Not at all. It lifted me up, which is, it gets very emotional every time I do this because I don't get to lift myself up with that ease and with that grace and with that precision.
So I'm now going to give control to Fernanda. And one of the big things that we've worked on is this balance of, as a therapist, which I'm not, but I'm going to play one for right now. As the therapist, I want to be able to guide her. I also want to be able to tell, pay attention to what's going on and everything. Also, she needs to coordinate her motions with the steps and with what's going on. So the machine needs to be in sync with her, not necessarily with me. So we've given control to Fernanda. There's a crutch interface here on the walker that if you want to know any details about, Susan spent an entire summer working on it. She knows a lot about it. But the crutch interface basically has 2 buttons. It has one button that's going to engage walk or stop walk. And then it's got one button on the bottom that's going to take steps. However, we have redundant buttons everywhere to allow for left-handed people, right-handed people, people with limited thumb flexibility, limited finger flexibility. So there's a lot of redundant buttons there, but there's 2 functions. So when Fernanda wants to start walking, she's just going to hold the button with her thumb. Oh, maybe I have to tell it. Hold on. No. Okay, try it. Nope. Okay, that's a new function. Okay.
So you press it.
Yeah. Okay. So we have an auditory clue. We've also got a visual clue down here with the light turned on, if you can see it. And then we're going to go ahead and take the first step. The first step, she pushes the button to initiate, because otherwise, again, the machine would walk without her. After that, as soon as her body position is in the right spot, the machine's going to go ahead and take the step, so that's more coordinated with her motion. And we don't have the biggest runway here, so we're going to, forward. Huh? Yeah. So steering is still one of our problems. Go ahead and turn to the left. Because we don't have, we only have 4 motors. That's for cost, for simplicity, for safety, and for weight, and for power, and for about 100 other things that you guys mentioned. We only drive the hip and the knee in flexion and extension, which means that turning and out-of-plane motions are really difficult, especially on carpet, that challenges everybody's ability to pivot in place. So, okay. Just take one step.
Right.
Yep. Okay, right step. Okay, and then pivot. So we do have this fancy turning program, but again, carpet's still a challenge. Okay, then push, double click to get out of turn. There you go. Okay, right step. Okay, left turn. Okay.
It is difficult on carpet.
Yeah, carpet's a challenge. So,
Yeah, where we test in the warehouse, it's all slick floors.
I got it.
Got it?
Okay, right step. And we've also worked a lot on making the EXO really easy for individuals to learn to use, so that people can get up and moving in rehab or in the hospital as quickly as possible. And we think we've done a good job of making it easy to learn, easy to use. Okay. Yep. So Fernanda actually hasn't walked in EXO since we did this demo last year. So, unfortunately, because we would love to see her more.
Because I don't want to do it, but then there's phases of the exos that I tested from the beginning. And from the beginning, which was 2010, before I went out to market, today, to what I'm using today, there has been a mountainous improvement. From the original EXO, I was locked in there, pretty much, where this is now allowing me and anybody who has some power with their legs to be assisted. Whereas before, when my legs were getting stronger, it creates a momentum, it wants you to keep going. The first system would lock me up and say, no, you're not going there. So throughout the time, the engineers and the clinicians have really listened to the test pilots because our bodies continue to improve. And seeing that move along, the controls and mechanics, even the weight, even the pivoting on this, it's now allowing me, I mean, it looks rigid, but it's allowing me to do more of a pivot turn with my upper body that has to connect with my hips and all that.
Something that I noticed that I really appreciate is that the machine presents the person first. So I see very little of the machine, which I think is really, did you guys take that into consideration, or?
Not necessarily that aspect, and I'm glad that that's what you noticed. One of the things that we did consider was being able to sit at a conference table. We've made things really narrow here. Our goal was actually to sit in an airline seat, which, I don't know, it's a pretty ambitious goal because airline seats are not known for their maybe coat. But we really designed, when you sit down, these things are out of the way so you could sit under a table and things like that. And so by virtue of that, yes, some things are to the back, and it does make it a little more free. And we'll work on getting the rest of it down.
Another thing that they design into this is the posture aspect. Because most folks that are, not walking, when we stand up, we have a tendency of leaning forward. And I had to learn how to stand up straight with the posture. With the backpack and the way this is all underneath me, it helps me stand erect. And my hips are underneath me, my shoulders are above me. And that may not be the normal sense of when you guys walk, when we walk. Usually there's a pitch forward. But standing tall like this, it engages me. Again, paralysis says you can't feel anything. It engages me knowing that there's a backpack, something behind me. Now it engages me that I have something behind me. There's that relationship. In paralysis, it's all about reconnecting the nerves, the muscles, and all the tissues. And if there's nothing that's stimulating me back there, my side of the body and the back, it would still be there as a one.
Let me ask, have you walked before on your own prior?
Before my accident? Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember that sensation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that transition, we all have an innate sense of rhythm of walking, but when you get into EXO, you learn how to walk as an EXO. In other words, you see me shifting my weight from side to side. It's not a forward motion gait. This brings my weight to the left in order for the right leg to go forward. So it's this kind of movement, and I have to learn how to do that. I have to learn how to think like a robot, or move like a robot.
In a therapeutic setting, typically how long does it last?
The batteries or the... a session, typical therapy sessions are 1 hour. So from patient arrives to patient leaves, 1 hour. Yeah.
Same question. People who have scoliosis or that, very far post-accident.
Yeah. So we do have some accommodations that can be made for various different things. One of the really common things is knee valgus, so turning of the knees. We can accommodate some of that. Contractures where you've got knee bent. We've done custom padding for the back. We have a lot of people with more hardware in their back than I really knew was possible, but lots of hardware and bolts and things that we need to accommodate, and so we pad that specially. So we can accommodate that. We can accommodate some, scoliosis and unevenness. We definitely have a set of foot lifts to keep the feet level, because with spinal cord injury, frequently you'll have leg length discrepancies. So we've tried to accommodate as much as we can safely while still being able to, move through the range of motion.
I think I'm gonna go one more pass.
Okay. Any other questions while Fernanda walks? I think we're about done, but.
Can the unit be used independently by a user or is it always intended?
In the current system that we are in, there's always a spotter, and that's for safety reasons and for balance and, hold on. It's still in turn. It was in turn.
So let me just butt in here for a moment. It's like 5:30, so if anybody needs to leave.
Okay, go ahead.
This
Right,
is the
Steph.
time, but for those who want to stick around, you're most welcome to stick around and there'll be a chance for you to come up here and get a closer view. So thank you for coming and attending. And I think maybe at this point we'll...
So in the current setup, we always do have a spotter. We just aren't quite to the safety and sophistication yet to be spotter-free. So we hope not, because me following people around is just not. Yeah, eventually we want to get to a really, truly independent model, but that requires being able to recover from a fall, or what happens if you stumble, or anything, balance, anything like that. And so there's a lot more work to be done there.
In the earlier days, at least when somebody currently needed this in the lab, I was actually tethered in the gangway. When they showed me that, I'm going, wait a minute. Are you guys, I'm going to sit into that, and there's this big thing on the hood behind me. But luckily, all the test pilots are not neat where they have to yank us off the floor and lift us up, so it's a good thing.
You guys, yeah.
Is the control mechanism on the walker just added to a normal walker that you bought from another source, or is that a custom walker that you're integrating?
Both, yes. So this is a custom walker that we have designed, but mostly for ease of going from the sit to stand. So this double layer thing is ours. The crutch interface is added on to what started as an off-the-shelf walker. This crutch interface actually attaches to a walker either side, a crutch, or a cane. And those, the crutch and the cane we had to modify a little bit to be able to hold the end of it. But they're basically off the shelf with an added piece. So. Oh, yeah.
So I think you used to have canes for each arm.
Yeah.
So is that still an option?
Still an option, yeah. So we actually have expanded our walk aid option. So we've got the walker, which provides a lot of stability. The crutches, which a little more maneuverability. Also for our hemiplegic patients, we have a cane now. So there's one arm. Yeah.
Your posture right there looks great. Do you ever, when walking, when wearing it like right now, do you ever worry about leaning too far back? Would the machine let you do that?
No.
No?
No. Nor will it let me lean too far forward. And I think that's one of the things that was discovered with the test pilot is, at least with me, I have a tendency of leaning forward because I just want to get going. Right? So that was creating a disturbance with leaning too much forward. Because imagine, if I lean forward, if this caves in on me, I have 50 pounds on me. So I had to learn to pay attention and say, okay, lean back, Fernanda. But the posture of this is really, I think, one of the benefits for users because it allows me to sustain my body gravity at a level. And when I first saw the EXO, I immediately saw it as a scaffolding. And everything inside the scaffolding is still a live tissue. And that helped me work how to move inside the EXO rather than allowing EXO to come in every move that I was doing. But that was also a challenge for me.
So we also have passive ankles at the bottom, which are helping to provide her support. They aren't active, there's no motors on them. but they are sprung to varying degrees. We can adjust the spring rate and also the center point. So when Mike, our physical therapist, was working with Fernanda, he was able to kind of dial in where her balance point is and set that 0 point for the spring at that point, and that's helping to give her even more stability than our previous devices had.
Speaking of physical therapists too, what's very interesting is now the physical therapists are starting to learn and be trained with innovation and technological devices in this capacity. I think that there's a whole new level of learning and education there, because we're working as a physical therapist and with the engineers, it's a wonderful combination. I witness it every time I work with them. It's like the language they all have together, transitioning from a kinesiology aspect to a mechanical strength.
Okay. I have a question. So how many years has it taken to get to this point? How many hardware prototypes have you gone through? And could you estimate money that represents?
So I started on the project when we first started working on a medical exoskeleton in 2007. And we actually had a NSF SBIR grant to work on a medical exoskeleton. So in 2007 was when we first started really working on this. However, we cheated. Our lab had been developing exoskeletons for strength augmentation for years before that. And so we took a lot of the lessons learned from those devices. So our exoskeleton Hulk, which is our now commercialized load carrying device, we learned how to transfer load. We learned how to build these joints. We learned